Welcome, everyone, to the NCAA Football Show, powered by SportsMemo.com and on the Predictive Playbook platform. I'm your host, John Ryan. This is Week 15, and it's better known as the Army-Navy game. Plus, we're going to take a look at some of the bowl games that are coming up on the early slate, looking at basically the top 8, the first 8 in the rotation. And we're going to start right away here with Army-Navy, and this is a special one. Has a little bit more special meaning for me since I lived 2 blocks from the towers for the better part of 15 years, having left there in the summer of 2000. And this, 20 years ago, we all know what happened, but they are moving this game to the MetLife Stadium, which is in East Rutherford. It's as the crow flies, I'm guessing probably about 7-8 miles in a straight line to where the site was, but they'll have a beautiful view of the New York City skyline. So I think the pregame is going to be pretty intense, and I'm sure they're going to celebrate all the people that gave their lives to fight terrorism from that day on. That marked the day that we, as a nation, started fighting terrorism, and there was a lot of lives that were suffered. So that we could be doing what we're doing right now, guys. So hats off to them in a big way. So Army-Navy, 3 o'clock Saturday. 63% of the money so far is on Army. The line really hasn't moved much. It opened at some places at 8. Currently 7.5 is what I'm seeing at Penny and Heritage. This game, guys, pretty much square on Army here. I'm a little worried that it's only 7.5. I'd feel better if it was 9.5. But, I'm not even going to say the numbers of these metrics, but Army has advantages in offensive scoring at 35.5 points per game. They have the advantage on defense. They have the advantage in first, second, third, and fourth quarter average scoring. Navy has a scant advantage in red zone scoring. The only problem with that is that Army gets into the red zone a heck of a lot more than Navy has this year. And then looking at sacks per game edge, Army. Interceptions per game, Army. Penalties per game, Army. Yards per punt return, Army. Yards per kickoff return, edge to Navy, and that's because they're giving up a lot of touchdowns and they get a lot of kickoffs. So I won't belabor the point. I am on Army in this matchup, guys, and I'm going to turn this over to Chuck now. And I know he has an interesting view of a team total bet, I believe.
Yeah, so like you said, John, and you didn't even get into the total. It's a pretty dead nut under total for about a decade and a half here, and that just keeps dropping. It's opened 37 now. I think you can get 33 and a halves if you were wanting to go over on this. Eventually we're going to hit a point where it has to go over. Yes, 15-0 was last year's final score, and so you could say, what the hell are you talking about? It's eventually going to go over. But I'm looking at Army. The offense has actually been an historic offense this season. If you look at 2 things that I like to pay attention to, points per drive and how many drives result in a touchdown, Army is in top 5 in the country. That we're talking in the realm of Georgia, Ohio State, Alabama, and actually Western Kentucky is the other team that it falls in the top 5 with them. But they're scoring a touchdown on 44% of their drives, which, yes, there was that Wake Forest game that you could see as a little bit of an anomaly. But I like where this offense is going to be able to go. Yes, Navy knows what they're going to do, just like Army knows what Navy's going to do on offense. But Army's mixed in that throw a little bit more, and you're going to get like a 20.5 at DraftKings as of that might be gone now, but I'd play it all the way up to needing Army to get 24 points. You can get a 22.5, 23.5. I think they're scoring 28 points here. That's where I put this. Maybe they can go even higher. I don't know if Navy's going to score at all, so I would probably think that John's side is the right side as well. I'm hoping that Army keeps their foot on the gas a little bit longer than they have in historically, and I just think that there's a lot of value on this offense to just kind of run rampant at least early in the game on Navy.
Good job, Chuck. I'd like to take on it, and I have a question for both you guys. I like to do the in-game stuff and betting 50% pre-flop under. So 30, as you said, 34 for sure you get right now as we're doing this show. 33 and a half at some other places. It's definitely trending lower and lower. Is there, you see any problem with me and what I'm thinking of doing is betting 50% pre-flop and then almost hoping that both teams come out and score, much like they did in the Monday Night Football game with the 100-mile-an-hour winds and 3 pass attempts by Mac Jones, where right after they both score, you're looking at 46.5 to 47.5 versus a 39.5 pregame line. So do you think I am on the right side trying to bet the under like that, or is there a better way to do this? Let's start with Jesse first.
I'm inclined to not want to bet the under when the total is 34. I'm aware of the long-standing trend in Army versus Navy, but I'm with Chuck. It does get to a point where that number gets so low that it makes you want to go the other way. I'm not quite there yet for this game, but I think I think you made a solid point as far as waiting for them to score early and then seeing if you can get value. But I think I'm going to avoid the pre-flop bet myself on such a small number.
I'm beginning to think I will too, because it almost starting to feel like an over bet to me. But I don't want to be that idiot that's at the roulette table that sees red come up 11 times in a row and then tries to fade it, because the mathematical term is mutually exclusive. Just because you flipped a coin 8 times and heads came up all 8 doesn't mean that tails is due. But there is value in the over. Not much, but if I had to do a value bet pure and simple, I think it is on the over. But it's a scary one because, as Dr. Chuck said, I mean, hell, Navy might not score in this game, and I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case. But Dr. Chuck, what's your views on the idea of pre-flop and then looking to add in-game?
So I think in-game, I was actually having a discussion with someone this morning about how I think the way to just absolutely pad your bankroll is live betting. If you have a system that is already pretty solid at diagnosing what a game is going to look like and how it's going to play out, and you analyze those numbers and then utilize them maybe pre-flop, but more in-game, I think that's retirement strategy right there. I liken it to gives you the ability to be Johnny Cochran against some small town assistant district attorney with the computers having no choice. The books are willing to hang a 34. So if Army scores on the first play, it doesn't mean that all of a sudden their numbers are gone, but the books have to react, and they're going to react to 38, 39, something like that, because we're looking at 14 minutes left in the first quarter and Army's up 7-0. That doesn't mean anything. The game could end 7-0. But they give you no choice. The books have no choice but to react. And so, there's just so many different ways to attack nowadays winning. We were discussing this off air, and that's where Jesse's going to go. Multiple different ways to attack. Sure, you can take the side. Sure, you can take a total and hope that you're right by your numbers. But there's so many other ways. And, there's a lot of things to get into. And so I'm excited for Jesse to go to his aspect of this game. But I'm not going to be on the total. But if I was, I'm leaning towards this fight ending at some ridiculous 31-7 and everybody being angry at the end.
Interesting. And while you were talking, Dr. Chuck, I have these little things called databases. And I suddenly realized that Army is averaging more points on their own merit per game than the total.
Mm-hmm.
So I asked the database.
By many, I think.
Tell me what happens when you're in a game and the total is lower than one of the team's average scoring for the year. The side is 38, 26, and 3 for 59.4%. That clearly supports Army. The under, and this is mind-blowing, 45, 21, and 1. That's 68% to the under. When you have a game where one of the teams' average points per game is actually higher by its own merit than the total. Man alive. It's the roofclaim.com Boca Raton Bowl. Western Kentucky versus Appalachian State. Obviously a neutral field. Saturday, December 18th. So far, 57% of the money is on App State. They are installed as a 2.5-point favorite. The line opened there. Total 67.5. It has edged up to 68. Western Kentucky 8-5 in the season. App State 10-3. So take it away, Jesse, and tell us where you think the betting opportunity lies.
Well, John, betting on bowl games is a whole different kettle of fish than betting during the regular season. You don't always pick the better team because you got to find the team that's more motivated to win, the team that's going to take the bowls more seriously. You got to be concerned about players skipping the bowl. And when I look at App State to me looks like a team with a coaching staff that wants to win in bowl season, and the history certainly suggests that is the case. The Mountaineers are 10-3 in the Sun Belt. The Hilltoppers just 8-5 in the Conference USA. App State is 4-1 against the spread in their last 5 bowl games. Last year, they won 56-28 over North Texas. Back in 2019, they won 31-17 versus UAB. In 2018, they won 45-13 versus Middle Tennessee. So we've got a clear trend there of App State performing in their bowl games. Even back as late as 2012, 34-0 versus Toledo. Neutral site games, App State's 5-1 against the spread in their last 6. And we look at Western Kentucky. They lost 39-21 to Georgia State in their last bowl game. So I'm looking at App State to continue that trend of playing well in bowl games.
Yeah, and I think I agree with that, Jesse. I think the Sun Belt will be well represented by App State. And let's move on to our next game here with Dr. Chuck. We're looking at Utah State, which is garnering some public interest here. It has 70% of the money bet on them as a 7-point underdog, taking on Pac-12 representative Oregon State, which outperformed, I think, preseason expectations by quite a bit. So good for them. This line, Oregon State -7, opened at 7.5. Total was 64.5, currently 66. Utah State 10-3, Oregon State 7-5. Where do you see the betting opportunity in this matchup, Chuck?
I'm going to use a lot of the stuff that my man Jesse went with there. I think Utah State is not a team that we talked about a bunch. Jesse had them on a few times, but it's a team whose coach is Blake Anderson from Arkansas State. I don't think a lot of people know that. Arkansas State, similar to what Jesse was saying, last 4 bowl games, they won 2. The other 2 that they lost were 3 points and 4 points. And so he gets his team ready for a prolific pass offense and finished off really well. They slaughtered San Diego State last week in a game to win the title. And I don't think that's going to be something they want to let down from. Oregon State, I mentioned Blake Anderson has been in a bowl game for several years, almost every year he was at Arkansas State. Jonathan Smith hasn't played in one yet. This will be his first game in the postseason since becoming the head coach of the Beavers. And, they focus on the run, and they had a really confusing season. If you were trying to figure them out, they lost outright to Colorado, but beat Utah, amongst other really confusing aspects. And I just don't see a reason that a team like this would be laying 7 points. I don't even know if they're better than Utah State. I kind of think because this is a neutral field. I like to take some of this stuff into account when you're doing the math on stuff. You're telling me if Utah State were to go to Corvallis this weekend to play a game, they might be a 10 or 10.5, 11-point dog. And and who wouldn't be on that? And so, this is following in the wake of the San Diego State game. So it's just pure value. I think they have the better offense, and Oregon State is going to have a hard time trying to keep up their run offense against Utah State's pass offense. And I like that as an aspect when you're getting 7 points. And, it's who doesn't want to play a game in a bowl called the Jimmy Kimmel Bowl. So I think Utah State might win this game. So take 7 points for sure, and look for Blake Anderson to keep his postseason run going.
Good job, Chuck. You're absolutely right. And nobody would decline an offer to play in the Jimmy Kimmel Bowl for sure. One question for you. Do you think this game, do you think Utah State has what it needs to actually win it out? And would you sprinkle the money line?
I would. I was trying to research around, and for those of you guys that look at different metrics and have your own power ratings and compare them to other power ratings, for those of you that put any salt in Sagarin has Utah State favored by 2. So it's interesting to take that into account. On the flip side, Action Network has Oregon State. They think they should be 9.5-point favorites. So it's a place I would probably sprinkle the money line and trying to decide who you trust more. But I trust Utah State's pass offense to be able to put points on the board. And if we're going to be putting points on the board all game, I'll take the 7 points.
All righty. I like it. So let's move on to our final game. And this is an interesting matchup too. There's only 44 bowl games, guys and gals. And we're trying to isolate the ones that we think are the best ones to consider for your bets. No joking around. So this is UAB against BYU. BYU's 6.5-point favorite. Initially, my thoughts are that's not near enough. So why am I leaning towards UAB? But UAB is only getting 25% of the money. That makes my decision-making even harder because I want to be contrarian. And I love fading favorites that are getting too much action prior to 24 hours before game time. This game is not taking place till 3:30 p.m. on Saturday, December 18th. So we have time for that. BYU's 10-2 was a top 10 team at one point earlier in the season. They're going up against UAB at 8-4. Jesse, what did you see in this game?
Well, John, I'm a BYU fan. I have been for a while, and I think it's important to remember how BYU started the season 5-0 with wins over Utah and Arizona State when both those teams were ranked. This BYU team, much like App State, they're a team that comes to play. I don't anticipate any of their star players sitting out the bowl games. That hasn't been a trend that we've seen with them in the past. UAB, they played a much softer schedule. They only played one Power 5 team. That was a loss to Georgia by somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 points. And BYU, 7-2 against the spread in their last 9 versus Conference USA teams. Their last bowl game was in 2019. They won 31-17 over App State, beating a tough team. They beat Northern Illinois in 2018. They lost 41-6 to Ohio in 2017. BYU coming to play in the bowl is something that we expect every year. And against a UAB team that really doesn't play teams as talented as BYU on a regular basis, I think they're going to struggle.
Yeah, I like it. And that's a great point you make, Jesse, that when we get towards the bigger bowl games, with all due respect, identifying what team wants to be there and what team doesn't want to be there can lead you to some very, very good betting opportunities. And LSU comes to mind now that I don't know whether their starting quarterback and the wide receiver will be playing in the bowl game since they entered the transfer portal. But it doesn't speak too well for Mr. Kelly coming into LSU next year when you lose your 2 of your most important players from this year's roster.
Well, and I just one point about what bowl games we're picking right now. We're going with early games. Not a whole lot, if anyone, from any of the games we've picked so far are going to worry about opt-outs. Thibodeau started the trend. The Buckeyes didn't make the playoff. The discussion around here in Columbus is, are any of the 3 receivers going to play in the Rose Bowl, et cetera, et cetera. And so this is something we'll have to worry about later, but not right now as much. And so you can kind of cap it as you would normally cap it. And so that's nice. Like Jesse said, there's a whole different kettle of fish, but it's a way bigger kettle of fish when we do this show in 2 weeks. And we're trying to pick these teams that thought they were going to be in a playoff, now are not in a playoff, and have a bunch of draftees. So, I mean,
yeah, you can hardly blame the kids for not wanting to play in the bowl game, given the money that is being paid for NFL elite players. It seems to be crazy numbers, but I really can't blame them because who would want to rip a knee or blow a knee out in a Rose Bowl when it's not for the national championship on these programs? It's a shame to think that way, but I understand why. And the future is everything for those kids. So anyway, that brings us to a close for week 15 in our early bowl leagues. We appreciate you watching our shows, and we'll look forward to doing this again next week on Tuesday, and it'll be published Tuesday afternoon. And on behalf of Dr. Chuck, Jesse, myself, SportsMemo.com, and the cast of shows called The Predictive Playbook, may all the wins be yours.